This is episode 6 of the DNA of Games podcast, a series highlighting the disabled and neurodiverse talent in the games industry. I'm your host Chris, and this podcast was created to chat with other disabled and neurodiverse people like myself and normalise the discussion of disabilities and neurodiversity in the games industry. I hope this podcast helps you see the identities often left out of the discussion when it comes to games and really encourage others like ourselves to break into games. Obviously, I do edit things out, so like I've trimmed off the start because I'm just rambling excessively to the person and go, and now we're going to begin. But yeah, so hi, welcome to another episode of DNA of Games, the podcast all about celebrating the disability, neurodiverse, and accessibility of games, and really creating a platform for, I don't want to say unique, but yes, unique is a good word, individuals such as Harriet today. So hi Harriet, I'm so glad that you're here. I know I call you Harry more than anything. So
Harry's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to end up flipping between Harriet and Harry, so it is the same person, yeah. I promise. But yeah, I kind of met you a while ago now.
Yeah.
Because you answered my call for people to join the panel, which I was very, very grateful for. Because it was the first time I was kind of like dipping my toes into advocacy in the industry, especially. So I was just like, oh my god, who's going to come to this panel? Who's going to actually be in the panel? So, you know, I'm going to give you a gold star just for that. Like, you know, Pat Harriet did the right thing. I'm so appreciative of that. But yeah, it's been great to kind of grow with you, because I think we're both at the same point in our lives and our career, especially in games. And it's nice to sort of have that, like, person I can just talk to about, like, oh my god, I'm applying to these jobs, or I'm doing this in my job, or I'm doing this for accessibility, and you just go, yeah, I get you, same Z's.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, Harry is like a producer by trade, accessibility expert by career now.
Yeah.
As well as obviously being a very good advocate of disability and neurodiversity, because it's something you have a lot of experience, given you have a lot of lived experience with that. But also, I find you are very knowledgeable in the wider scope of it as well. Like, you know, there's often times where I'm listening to you and I'm just like, you make sense. You're talking about whether that's like working lives of people with disabilities and neurodiversity, or, you know, just that sort of general like knowledge of being inclusive for people like us. And that's why I always feel like, you know, you're just, to me, you are like one of the next generation of superstars in the industry.
I like that. I like that.
And you know, I'm so excited about what you're going to do, because I think you are that cusp of like being somebody that's going to be, you know, of extreme importance for the industry. I know that's a big introduction for you.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether you want to say in your words, kind of who you are and like sort of what you do in games.
So yeah, I'm Harriet. I mostly at the moment do accessibility consultation. So anything from, is the game accessible, to how you're setting up an accessibility team, or how to talk to your employees who are disabled and need support, and things like that. But I am, like Chris said, I am a producer by trade. So I do have that, you know, the knowledge of how to herd cats and herd them well. But you know, I mean, I've been playing games since I think before I was born, technically, so that counts as far as I'm concerned. I know for a fact I heard noises from a spectrum while in utero or something. I think it did something to me mentally. It's always, and my passion is, you know, not just obviously making sure that games are accessible to gamers, but making sure that game development is accessible to a wide range of people who feel comfortable, you know, talking about and utilizing the skills that they may have as a result of being disabled. You know, so I do stuff with Autistica Play as an ambassador, and yeah. So yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I've got plans. I've got some interesting plans for the future that I think are going to make some good waves, if that makes sense. So
yeah, the whole part. Games is a tricky mistress, because a lot of people can only say so much about what they're doing or who
Yeah.
they're involved with.
Well, I mean, there's one thing, and I mean, I've got other plans as well. So in addition to other plans, it gets all vague. It's all like, you know, I mean, that's a challenge. But yeah, I do have lived experience, and it does make it for a unique perspective. Especially because I'm very much more, whether that's by nature of how my neurodiversity manifests, I'm a bit more on the logical rather than emotional. If I'm logical first, then emotional. Obviously, there's an emotional, like a real impact to lack of accessibility. But I have all these things, you know, like 1.7, no, it's 1.2 billion people are disabled in the world, right? How much money are you losing? Right? So like I'm that kind of like sort of orientation a lot of the time, because, you know, if you can't get them with the feelings, then get them with the money.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of maybe accessibility spaces tend to maybe go on the emotional rather than that cold hard facts of, you know, accessibility. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, like, I always kind of do that as well, where it's kind of like, yes, you're doing the right thing and the best thing. But in a purely business standpoint, it's, you know, more people.
Exactly. And, you know, but yeah.
I don't know whether you want to explain kind of what conditions you live with. I know you've got an interesting mix.
Oh yeah, I have the cocktail, capital T, capital C. So yeah, we'll start with the one. We'll go with the ones that are, like, you know, the ones I pay attention to most of all, that cause me the most. Let's call them challenges. So I am ADHD, got autistic, and I have fibromyalgia. I also have a condition of where my body does not react well to things. It tends to have allergic reactions just because it feels like it and it wants attention. So, you know, I have a restrictive diet a lot of the time because of that. I have other things, you know, there's some dyspraxia in there, but I think it gets overwhelmed by ADHD and autism to the point where it's just like, I don't even, you know.
Like, I'll just wait my turn. You do your thing first, and then I'll read my ugly head.
And the other thing, I have non-epileptic attack disorder. So what that is when I was younger, I had juvenile epilepsy. So I used to have lots of epileptic seizures. It leaves a permanent sort of like a blueprint in your brain. And so what my brain does is it goes, I'm stressed, let's have a seizure. So I tend to be quite chill with most things, because obviously the more stressed I get puts me at risk. You know, and epilepsy.
Perfect for games development.
Yeah. I mean, it works really well actually, because it means that, you know, when people are in a sort of development aspect, it's better for you when you're the eye of the storm. You know, if, you know, as far as I'm, you know, in production, your stress needs to not push off on other people. So I try and find better ways to not be stressed, you know, and find ways to sort of create a separation between like work and personal as well, and also making sure I've got all of those all important sort of accommodations in place to basically mean that I am the awesome person that I am and working at my full capacity. You know.
So you know, having that sort of blend, you know, I think you've just hinted there before, like, you know, things kind of like flare up at different times, so you're probably dealing with different things on different days. There's a consistent, everybody at the same level thing. It's going to be
definitely.
It's going to be that sort of sliding scale of like one's going to get your attention more than others.
Like for my fibromyalgia, summer is like, this is my time. The fibro is sort of quiet, it's not upset, you know. Obviously fibromyalgia can be impacted by your emotional state as well. So at least some of the sort of the ways I cope, you know, and the things I put in place to cope with things, they work across the board for many of the other things at the same time. But like summer's a good time for the fibre, you know, for my pain and stuff like that. It's warm, so I don't need a heat pad. You know, and also, you know, it's just a lot more comfortable in general. You know, and like obviously in the winter I have a bit more challenges with the physical side of things, you know, and like it's interesting because ADHD largely affects my executive function. To be fair, so does the autism, and they also affect my hearing, more like my comprehension of things as well. So I can't hear people in a crowd. If there's more than a couple of people and there's background noise, can't hear. I cannot discern one noise from another. Although when I'm properly fully medicated with the ADHD, it's a lot easier for me to sort of like concentrate and like pick up one voice from another. But I do have to get used to not doing the normal thing. Going, what? I have to learn how to be polite, how to be a regular socialized human being.
Well, I think that a lot of people would echo with that in terms of like, you know, having like ADHD and like, you know, that been just being overloaded by whatever it is, whether that's sound, you know, smells, people, information, and that sort of, you know, actually being able to pick out the thing that you need to concentrate on. So I think a lot of people will recognize that in themselves, like, as well.
I mean, I use Notion basically to order my life. It is my other brain. I have it separated. Like I've got my personal, I've got my career, I've got everything separated. You know, like all the game dev stuff I do for fun, you know, that goes in one. Anything that I'm learning about production or new disability stuff, that goes in another. Because I can't, even with my medication, recalling information is really, really challenging because I liken it to when I'm not medicated, all the information is in Pandora's box at the bottom of a deep shaft, you know, it's in a treasure chest in a mimic at the bottom of a deep shaft under a pyramid, buried under sand, buried under water, and you're in a tiny fishing boat. And you're fishing with a fishing rod and a hook trying to find a thought. It's kind of like that. And it's the other algo I've got for it is a busy train station, right? It's like Birmingham New Street, for example, something like that, right? Obviously, normally you have all the tracks going in and out, and it's well organized, one train at a time on each track. When I don't take my medication, I have one track and it doesn't work. So I have all the thoughts in there and I know where they are, and if I think about it in a sort of like 4D visualization, I can sort of comprehend what I'm trying to remember, but I can't find it. It's like I know where it is. I mean, even in the physical space, like in reality, I will put my phone down. It's gone. That's it. It doesn't exist anymore because people with ADHD have really bad object permanence. If they can't see it, it doesn't exist, and it does, and that affects social relationships really, really badly. Because it's not that I don't care about relationships or friendships, it's that I forget because my brain is like, oh, you're not talking to that person at the moment, therefore they don't exist anymore. So it takes that extra effort. You do have to put a little bit more effort into your relationships to accommodate neurotypical people who need a lot more reassurance from a social relationship. Like my close friend group, we're all neurodiverse in one way or another. And the great thing is, as I say, it's quality, not quantity. You don't need to talk to me every day. I'm awesome.
I think like, you know, that's a lesson that a lot of people will take years to learn. Like, you know, they say that, you know, if you stay friends with someone for like 5 or 7 years, then you're going to be friends for life sort of thing, and you don't have to be like constantly texting them every day to keep that relationship alive. And it's kind of like a lot of people struggle to realize that, you know, sometimes you kind of live in your lives, but then you can meet up once a month to, you know, say what everything was going on. Like I've got friends now that I kind of drop in now and then, but it doesn't mean they're any less of a friend. It doesn't mean that you know, I don't love them any less. It just means that we've just got busy lives. You know, we're all turned into adults now, so we get on with things.
I mean, learning those. I mean, this is the thing. Like, games themselves are the thing that taught me how to socialize like a neurotypical person. You know, things like branch dialogue in a game, you know, choices and a consequence depending on the choice, whether it's a good consequence or a bad one. It teaches people who, like, people without autism are born with a manual without never knowing that they understand social cues and things like that. On the flip side, like autistic people, we're not born with that. We have to learn that the hard way. And when I say the hard way, it is heartbreaking what we have to go through to learn these things, because to other people it's just, oh right, okay, but you should just know this. Like, well, I don't, so tell me. And the anger that you get often is a response to sort of like, oh, why are you asking me to repeat that? Why are you asking me why? Because I don't understand why.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like an interesting point then to sort of explore your career a bit more, and that is kind of like, you know, at what point, like at a young age maybe, or did you know from like the get-go that you were, you know, not neurotypical, you know, that you had these things that were popping up that would mean that, you know, your day-to-day is going to be a little bit harder than someone else's?
So I have known my whole life that I've always felt like I was on the sort of periphery of society. Although I had friends that were very sort of odd people like me, and I excelled in school. I was top student, right? People say, "Oh, right," and this is one of the elements that meant as a female, as a lady, I got under the radar sort of thing, because girls with ADHD and autism and neurodiversity, they don't manifest the same way as expected based on the male profile. So I really struggled. I was bullied from I was bullied from reception all the way through till college. I spent all those formative years basically having every aspect of my life tormented. It was, you know, so I have a very strong barometer for that kind of behavior, and I'm very much like, nah, we're not doing that. You know, I have that strong barometer about it, especially when I see it being done to other people. I cannot stand by when that happens to others. The autistic strong sense of justice kicks in. So yeah, you know,
well, that sort of sense of like, I guess, justice in a way, or just like you say, just like not putting up with the bullshit, basically. That really is like, you know, a transferable skill into production, into being a producer. You know,
exactly.
I think our producer knows when to stand up for team members that need it. And
exactly, and that's the thing is, like, I mean, when I was doing it, when I was doing so when I did my master's degree, it's like a live studio, so you are technically part of the studio. It is proper studio work, the way it's set up. Whenever the tutor's masquerading as stakeholders and senior staff members, you know, when they're there doing, I'm like, nah, we're not doing that. Oh, but then no, absolutely not. And it's that thing of being able to stand up and being able to justify and having the ability to be like, absolutely not. When they get personal, because people do sometimes, they forget themselves in a moment of passion and start getting personal and be like, let's use our feeling words now. Not our thinking words, our feeling words. I feel that, this, that. So well, you know, you're right. I mean, it does transfer. I mean, I was misdiagnosed my adult life with mental health conditions like borderline, which is quite a diagnosis. There's a lot of stigma and a lot of negative associations with that. I was misdiagnosed with cyclothymia, bipolar disorder. I was put on lithium. Wow. Right? Yeah. That stuff ruins you. It wasn't until actually that just before, so I think 2014, and I was like, I was speaking to some friends of mine, and they're like, you know, you might have ADHD, and I'm like, what? Like, yeah. I was like, so I researched, like, and I had so much imposter syndrome over the fact that I might be ADHD. I was like, right, I need to be able to prove to them that I have this. So I'm going to do all these things that aren't medication related to try and fix my ADHD. So I was like, okay, we're going to have structure, we're going to have planning, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I was lucky to be in the care of a psychiatrist at the time for these supposed, mood disorders. And she was like, let's send you over. It was like, yeah, you have quite severe combination ADHD, like quite severe. And I'm like, Oh, that's it.
And is that kind of the reality still now of young females not really getting the right diagnosis because
Definitely.
it's just I guess our medical field's just not equipped to deal with identifying
No.
women's needs like that.
I mean, a lot of the problem stems from research isn't typically done on cis females because of the fact our bodies are designed in such a way that our hormones and our immune system are a dice roll. That's why, there's a disproportionate amount of women who've been affected by long COVID because it turns out they didn't think about how it would affect women in our bodies and stuff like that. They're like, no, you'd be fine, maybe a couple of breathing. No, there are women debilitated by it because of the unique ecosystem of a cisgendered female's body, the way it's designed in order for the reproductive capacity and stuff like that. It does have an effect on the research and stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So a lot of it is that. I mean, a lot of it is also you've got young locums these days that haven't quite got the confidence to to vocalize for you a lot of the time. And then you've got the old guard, like you've got 50, 60-year-old doctors that I'm pretty sure they still think to operate, like surgery's done in those old wooden operating theatres with a crowd watching. Like, the amount of times some old doctors told me, yeah, I can see that you've got problems with your attention. If you lost weight, it would make it a lot easier. And I'm like, right, okay. I mean,
classic.
Especially because I am what am I now, like 6'1", 6'2"? I'm a tall lady, right? So, my weight distributes differently. Yeah, there was a time when I was overweight, and it was causing me health problems. But yeah, there was a lot of challenges with that, and sort of, I didn't get diagnosed basically until 2014. So, 6 years ago. The autism diagnosis is a footnote on my ADHD diagnosis because one of my ADHD specialists was like, yeah, you're autistic as well. Because my younger sister is in the same situation. She's got ADHD and autism as well. So it was that, and it's like, yeah, you're autistic. That's it. It's a footnote. I was like, so what do I do with this? Do I pursue this formally, properly? He goes, I'll be honest, it's going to be like 6 to 10 years before you get an official diagnosis or anything. I'm like, right, oh, right. Okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. So, even my fibromyalgia, that wasn't diagnosed till I was at uni. And that was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because suddenly my body wasn't working. I had an allergic reaction to something, and then after that my body started to hurt constantly. Like, I can only describe it as the feeling for me, the way, because fibromyalgia feels different to everybody.
Yeah.
On a general level, fibromyalgia for me is like having done CrossFit every day for a week with no break and the feeling afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Lots of intense exercise, so my muscles feel like post-exercise muscles. And I'll occasionally get like nerve pain, so I'll get it shooting across my face or in my arms, just like I've been electrocuted.
Yeah.
Because and stuff. So that was scary because suddenly I was confronted with, suddenly I was in pain. I deteriorated quite rapidly because of stress. So I was on a stick, then I was on crutches during my master's degree as well. So I was still doing top-notch producing while in a lot of pain. I was, So
it has obviously, a lot of this, a lot of official diagnoses come quite late for you, but have you sort of reflected back on your sort of younger life and gone, this makes more sense now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, under the lens, I mean, realizing that my dad was likely ADHD and getting to talk to him about that. And like my mom as well, realizing that she's likely autistic, and going, oh, thanks, it was you guys. My childhood, the way I played, the way I imaginate, my imagination as a child, the way I played with toys. So like the way I do things, so like I like to organize. So if I've got a bag of Skittles, I will eat them in color. So I have to take them out, order them by color, and I'm, for some reason, there's that compulsion to only eat in a specific pattern or order, because and I'm like, this makes so much sense.
Like, when I start, so obvious now.
Well, like, I was good at school because of people pleasing, You know, I didn't want to make anyone unhappy, so I worked really hard.
Yeah.
But I basically what I now know to be the first major severe meltdown that I would, you know, I'd ever had at that point, because everyone always just thought I was unstable, and oh, she's just having a moment, you know, that sort of thing. I now know those were meltdowns, but this one was severe. I mean, I was not very well. Like, I was severely suicidal at the time during my GCSEs. Still managed to come out with 8, so I don't know how that happened. God, like, the world should be happy that the fates chose to cripple me in that way, because really, like, I can only imagine what I'd be doing now if I'd managed to get those GCSEs at the A's I was predicted.
But yeah.
But it was, you know, looking at key moments, the way I got into some really, I mean, when I say I'm from a very bad industrial town, I mean high crime rate, high pollution, very, you know, deprived northern town. Right? It's got an oil, you know, it's you know, it's proper northern when it's got an oil refinery, when it's got an effluent plant, you know.
Yeah.
And then out, they refer to everywhere just on the outskirts as the nearby better town. They're like, yeah, we don't live there, we live, you know. Yeah. So, you know, I grew up in that sort of environment, and that again, it does put a disadvantage, because the boys would get diagnosed with ADHD at the moment's notice, because they'd be biting each other or something, you know. Northern kids are feral. It's a source of pride. But, you know, looking back, I would trust very untrustworthy people, because I had a naivety to me that I didn't realize that people learn that very quick. I didn't know it was a thing I had to learn, you know. When you put in the context of both my parents were neurodiverse, right? Not only that, but they were very young when they had me. I think my mum was 21 and my dad was 22. So they were still, you know, people that age are at university now, you know what I mean? So they were that age and they had me. They were neurodiverse and had no idea, because that generation, they think it didn't exist. It did. So yeah, they
just
they did struggle. You know, and you know, obviously, as me and my sister both got diagnoses of these neurodiverse conditions and things like that, having these honest conversations with your parents is like a thing that happened. You go through like a process of like, you grieve for the childhood you didn't have. That you should have had if you were diagnosed earlier. But at the same time, there are benefits to being diagnosed later. I have got, I don't know how, but I have like, it's not like a toolbox. It's more like a complete, like a garage full of toolboxes of things I've tried, things that worked for me. I can cope with. There is really very little I cannot cope with. Because I had to learn how to survive on my own. I had to be independent. I had to learn how to create coping strategies. You know, how do I work around these things that are getting in the way of me doing things and succeeding in like personal and like career, like you know, like after uni, that was, I struggled again, because you've got a big transition. You go from one environment to another, and they drop you. It's like they drop you on the curb after university. I wish that I'd spoke to people about that more at uni, because I did like, you know, student academic leadership and student support sort of stuff at uni. I wish I'd known myself, because I would be telling them, I would be like, look, university is great, you've got a safety blanket, but once you graduate, once you're done with that, that's it. They will never talk to you again. They have no interest unless you have a good job, and then they might want you to come in and talk about the good job you've got.
I could say, unless you start doing well, then they want to like show you off.
But if you are struggling in any way, they want nothing to do with you. And I don't think it's personal. I don't think it's like on purpose. I just don't think the system is set up for people that might struggle afterwards. You know.
Harsh reality. So, I just want to maybe take it like obviously maybe take mine a little bit earlier.
Go.
But like basically, how did games come into it? You know, were you always destined to go in? You know, want to get into games? You know, game development, or was it something that, you know, developed later on when you got to say college, university?
I think it was fate, and the reason, right? So This goes back way before I was born, right? So the high school my mum went to,
Yeah.
I think he was your English teacher, but a gentleman called Mike Singleton, who is basically one of the forefathers of Spectrum games. Basically, he's part of like the legacy and the history of the UK gaming industry. He taught my mum how to program, like as an after school thing, right? She never used it because, again, my mum. We now know my mum's neurodiverse, so we get it, right? But basically, that's it. And so she and my dad, they played games and stuff. We had consoles. Secondhand, we were in the below the poverty line growing up, so we had a lot of secondhand sort of consoles and things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like making them, I have this vivid yet blurry memory being 11 years old, and I think it was a precursor to it was way to make games. You drag and drop sprites, and it was always side scrolling because I couldn't work out how to do anything else. And when I was a little older, it was RPG Maker and trying to use Ruby to program stuff and to make, I'm going to make an RPG that's just as good as Suikoden 2. You're not, you're 14, but go for it. I remember that desperate. I mean, I ended up going through. I mean, the way I got into the games as an educational thing was, I actually, as a young adult, joined Second Life, right? So the metaverse before the metaverse, right? So if you want someone, I also have metaverse experience, a lot of it, in fact. Turns out you can have it before it happens. So basically, I wanted to create content for it, and there was nothing. It was always Maya, and I'm like, I can't afford that. I didn't have the facilities to pirate it either. So I started using Blender because it's free and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I realized, hang on a second, there's a market here. And a friend of mine who also created content in there was like, will you teach me? And I'm like, okay, yeah, you can be my guinea pig. And it worked. And I basically taught Second Lifers how to make 3D models for the engine, texture it, how to rig, how to do everything. And I do it in 6-hour lessons for, I think, $35 an hour, which is still good money. And it always went on a little more. A lot of the word of mouth was like, she's really friendly. She explains it really well because, for one of my skills and things that's just part of my nature is I'm very good at explaining things that are complicated in a way that makes people not feel like an idiot, which is a very good skill to have because most people, when confronted with complex information, feel really, really slow. And I know I think it's because I know what that feeling is like when people, because of me learnt the social side, because of having to learn that and people treating me like I had more developmental challenges than I actually did because I didn't understand what they saw as a basic thing.
Yeah.
I don't ever want, when I'm teaching someone, I never want someone to feel like that. I don't want, even when it comes to like with accessibility stuff, I never want someone to feel like the idiot just because they didn't know something. Like you can't, accuse someone of malignance just because they didn't know.
Yeah, no, such a good attitude to take because you could have gone the opposite. You could have been quite aggressive about it and been very like, why should I when you treat me like an idiot, just for social cues.
Exactly.
So it's nice that you've kind of got that better attitude of being like, hey, let's take a step back and let's just learn this.
I mean, it does come from that lens of, obviously, with autism in particular being a more like a circular colour spectrum than a straight line spectrum. There are people with more, with different levels of needs and challenges and stuff. And I thought, well, what if I was autistic and I had these other challenges? And it's like, how would I talk to myself? It's reflecting on that and making sure that you are communicating with people with sort of like a level of dignity and respect. Always assume good nature, assume good intent first.
Yeah.
Before you, start telling, oh, well, why you should know this, But yeah, so.
Yeah, taking that like, I guess Harry the teacher in Second Life.
Yeah.
When did you start going, hey, you know what? I'm going to start pursuing this as an actual career thing of like, I'm going to go to uni to get the qualifications, to get my foot in the door sort of thing.
So interestingly, it's because I was spiteful at the time. I went to college as an adult learner, did graphic design, loved it. Really enjoyed all the rules, and then being told to break the rules, and then being told no, you shouldn't break the rules in terms of like design and stuff like that, and visuals, and learning how graphic design and the sort of like design industry at that time, at least, I don't know if to be fair, it looks the same. Just copy what someone else has done. That's the trend. Just do that. Which I really struggled with because I'm quite a creative person. I think quite creatively, and so and I was like, there was the final module I decided to do calligraphy.
Yeah.
Right. And I know this seems like it doesn't connect, but wait for it. Right. And my tutor, she's like, there's no way you can do calligraphy. It's going to take you years to learn calligraphy. And I'm like, I didn't know I had ADHD at this point or autism. ADHD has this unique ability that under pressure you can literally move mountains and do miracles.
It's just because a hyper-focus, isn't it?
Yeah, it creates a driving force, and it is unfortunately a way a lot of ADHDs we live our lives, is creating artificial pressure to move forward, especially when you don't have medication that works for you.
Yeah.
So I was like, did you just tell me no? Like, oh dear. So I did it, and then I saw this course, right? Because we were looking at options for afterwards, and I was like, it was a games course, and I thought you had to know, like, programming or design to go to know these things already, and it was brand new. Like, it wasn't even on UCAS at the time. Like, I had to fill in a form, because I wasn't even up on UCAS yet. And my tutor's like, why do you want to go to do games? You've got a graphic design. You've done graphic design. And I was like, just keep telling me no. It's just going to push me. Do you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to do games. I'm going to do, really, really well in this. I'm going to be visible for the things that what do they call it? SME, subject matter expertise. I learned that recently. I'm going to push and I'm going to do these things. And I went, and it was quite a challenging interview just to get on the course, to be honest. It was like interviewed by 3 different tutors, 3 different disciplines.
Oh, wow.
Well, because I went in to do the the art side of things, doing the environment art.
Yeah.
But obviously, I had also the graphic design background, and also straight out of high school, I did a fine art DMBQ, stuff. So I've got a fine art background as well. So that did really well with the art. Oh, that's really great. There's some questions about how will you cope with it because you've got some mental health issues, and I'm like, I don't know. Why don't we try and find out?
Let's just roll the dice.
I am not Mystic Meg. I am not able to tell the future in this situation. And I didn't hear anything. So I literally emailed and begged. I was emailing daily to the art. I think it was the art tutor, because I knew that I was like, we bad. And I basically spammed him because I was like, and then I did end up having to defer for another year because of my health situation. But yeah, he basically got me in because I basically wouldn't leave them alone. Because it was that thing of like, oh, we're not sure. And I'm like, just let me in. I promise you it's going to be amazing. Let me in.
It's so strange that, because I think we pretty much went to university around the same time, and how I guess they didn't really acknowledge just how the amount of people that would have ADHD at that time, because we're finding out more and more, like, now in the industry, especially, like, a lot of people are getting diagnosed now, official diagnosis with ADHD, and realizing, that makes sense. And so that would mean that back when we were at uni, there would have been a lot of people with the similar like neurodiversity there. So it's funny that they kind of had that stance of like, Harry's not going to cope with this course, but it's like, so most of your course are going to be the same then.
And the reality is that I did struggle. I mean, I didn't know it was because of autism and a huge transition. I mean, there was lots of like problems when I first started uni. Like, my halls weren't built yet.
Yeah.
So they had us in a hotel, I mean, if anybody's been to the uni, I'm just trying not to do identifiable individuals, but if anyone's been to that uni, they'll know. There was that, and a new environment that I hadn't,
Yeah.
And I was doing all the art, and I was doing fine. And then we had a UX and UI module, which I don't know if they do still on that course anymore. It was and we had to redesign either a game or an app for to improve it in some way, right? To do a redesign. And I'd seen something in a magazine. I think it was the Game Industry Biz magazine when they still did those, because we used to have them in the uni in our sort of department. And I'd read it, and I think it was actually my tutor that pointed it out, because I'd gotten into and I was looking into the UX properly, and that's where I learned about accessibility.
Yeah.
And that was where I got I think it was as high as they could go without having to investigate the score, because they do. And it was my first, they were this is incredible. The feedback I got on it. I did research. I interviewed people with disability and without to find out what they wanted. And I redesigned Autodesk Sketchbook for mobile for colorblind people. Right? Because that's a uniquely the assumption is that if you're colorblind, why would you want to draw? You can't even see colors.
Yeah.
I went to college with a lad. He does graphic design for a living right now, colorblind, because it does more affect men more than it does women. Not that women don't get it, but it is prevalent more in the male population. And I thought, do you know what? That's the thing. What's the point of the others? They were like, "Oh, I'm going to redesign Overwatch." I'm like, okay, because that to me was the easy option. Redesigning Overwatch for mobile devices, in my brain, arrogant, because I was quite not arrogant in myself, but I had this attitude, an attitude that I've since killed off. I was learning about being in those environments. I'd never had the opportunity was not something. Especially being working class, I never dreamed of going. I'm the first person in my family, as far as I know, that has a master's. Yeah. Because people don't get masters when you're from that. They might go to uni, maybe do something, but people tend not to do masters because I don't know anyone in my family. My family's big.
It's funny how it's a privileged stance to be have that attitude of everybody goes to university nowadays and stuff like that. It's I was literally the only person in my family to have gone to university, for a good number of years. Only recently, my cousin, my youngest cousin, and all of my family, massive family, was the next person to go to uni, and that's a massive age gap between us two. And it's just it's crazy how people think that just everybody goes. Actually, no. If you come from certain backgrounds, actually, it's a very rare thing for you, to have the opportunity to go to uni, to have the encouragement to go to university, So it's a big achievement. So I applaud you for getting your masters.
Just about. I got there eventually.
They gave you the paper. That's all you matter.
I mean, that's the thing. Is the university getting into those opportunities. I ended up getting into production by nature of just speaking up when it was needed to be speaking up. I ended up being what they called an art liaison for an undergrad. It was a group module liaison with the coders and at the time we didn't have a design course or anything like that. So it was artists and programmers, and I think the design was done by the master's students for that department at the time. And I was art liaison. And I was there with all charts, Excel. I could only describe it like finding peace, just because it works with the way my brain works. And so it was simple. It felt like everything was just I feel like Sherlock Holmes's mind. Everything was just fitting in together, and it was just. And so then I started getting more opportunities throughout my undergrad to do that, and I did it on my final project at uni. So this is 2018 now, and so I did all the production and design on that, and to rave reviews from industry at the showcase event. Because it was a non-violent game, what they call a walking simulator, but I don't like that genre term because I feel like it diminishes the impact of those kinds of games. But it was a mix, you know, it was like about mental health. It was also about Eastern European folklore, and it wasn't violent, but it was a horror game, but it wasn't scary at the same time. It was a lot about, and you know, having like one of the Oliver, you know, we our uni often got some of the Oliver twins in because it's based in the middle of the country and stuff. So you know, like this is really good. It's non-violent and it plays really nicely and it's smooth. And I'm like, yeah, 4 girls made it, mate. That's it. We had four of us because we didn't really want to work with the lads in the art. Yeah, it was that thing. The attitude difference is very different, especially at that level. And there's a lot of, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so we did really well with that, and so I went on to do production in the masters.
Yeah.
Was, you know, did some design as well, but production, you know.
Production with the calling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing is like I do noodle about with like design stuff. I've got a load of little design documents going and stuff. Yeah. Because it's fun, and that's, you know, creativity and fun tend to go hand in hand. That's kind of the point.
Exactly right. And you know, sort of, you as like Harriet as you are now, like, you know, how did you, I guess, assert yourself in the industry? Because now you're like, moved on from being like student to now like, hey, I am a professional. You will treat me like a professional. Like, you know, I am here.
Honestly, this is an ongoing challenge. I mean, I submitted my CV to an agency, a big one. I'm not going to name the name because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, right? But they forwarded me to the graduate department. Now, I graduated university in 2019 with my master's degree. I'm not, it's that thing of, I'm not new, right? And it is a challenge trying to articulate that in a way that comes across on paper.
I applied, very similar to applying to a job, which I didn't read as like a first job in industry job. And it was just like, how, you know, like one of the questions was literally just like, you know, like, how will you, you know, how was your first job in the industry? How will you treat this? I was just like, I've been in the industry maybe a while now.
It is a challenge, and especially so my CV is, as far as I know, completely unique in how it's represented. So my CV uses specifically a font for dyslexic people. Right, it is not white. It's not black with white text. It is colours that are contrasting, but visually, basically, I can't look at a black and white CV. It gives me migraines because of the sensory overload. So I made a CV that I can look at. It doesn't read well in automated stuff. Oh, don't get me started on automated. So you know,
for another day.
Just as a side note, automated systems, while they make your life easier, absolutely exclude disabled people. That's it. That's all I'll say on it.
That's Harriet's tip for the recruiters listening in.
They can find me and shout at me about it, and we can discuss it more another time. But yeah, so, you know, but it is unique in that it is an accessible CV. It reads well with a screen reader.
Yeah.
It's visually easy to read for dyslexic people. You know, you can because with my dyspraxia, I also have, well, technically it's called uneven learning development, because I'm too old to be officially diagnosed with dyspraxia. Because at university, I don't know how that works because it's a lifelong condition. But I got diagnosed with that at university. That and what they call it, visual stress, so Mears-Erlen. So I get, you know, filters and stuff for reading, or people think high contrast is like white on black. You know, like that, but that's just as bad as black on white for me. So I, you know, lots of adjustments, a little bit of a sort of dusky grey blue. You know, is a lot. So yeah, my CV is accessible. I have actually thought, oh well, I might have to change that because I don't know if that's reading as I hope it is.
Yeah,
because I don't.
If you don't understand the accessibility of it, that you've done, like, you know, that expertise that you have crafted into it.
Exactly.
Then they're just gonna.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, like again, it's like, you know, that sort of like, you know, people assuming that your learning of social cues was a, you know, oh, she must be dumb thing. Like, you know, it's almost like the TVs get the same treatment. It's like, oh, they've done it in a dumb way, or like, you know, it's like,
this is a bit colourful.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're playing for the right role? This is production. We're boring people here. You know, like it's sort of, it's sort of the perception that because it has colours, it means creative roles. You know, this is that thing. You know, the way it's set up. I mean, one of the challenges, ADHD people tend not to be able to hold jobs, particularly when they're not medicated and stuff. So I flip from job to job. I recently, again, Notion, I like to categorize information. Notion's great for making databases of information. So I have a lot of them. Some of them ranging from things I like bugs and stuff. Some of them my education, as in what I'm currently learning now, what I've learned, what grade I got, where it is. Because when it comes to making CVs, all that information's there. I don't need to remember it anymore. I've got somewhere else, So, I was going through and I realized, especially with I did the same with my job history, and I realized how I've been working since 2003, right? So that's most of my life I have been, in the working world. So since I was 16, right? But you can't fit that on a CV when you're ADHD. And also when you're younger, you don't tend to stick out jobs. You tend to go to college full time maybe, and then get a different job at the weekends and things like that. But it made me realize exactly like how there's this perception that if you've had a lot of jobs, you must be a job hopper and you're not reliable. A lot of the times when I left those jobs, it was because I didn't know that I was neurodiverse and the conditions I was in. I didn't know, to ask for accommodations and things like that. You look at it through the context of what knowledge you have now, and you look back with that lens on, and sort of that vision, and you can say, oh, right, it does mean that I have a lot of knowledge of different industries and how some industries do things better, differently, worse.
It's kind of perfect for a producer to have that experience in other places, because other places might be doing things better than what we are.
Exactly. There's levels of, I've been working in retail, I've worked in, a retail warehouse and stuff. Things like that. You learn that it turns out production isn't just a job. You're either a producer or you're not. Your brain works in that way because you'll be doing it whether you realize it or not. Like, you can't help it. It's become a part of who I am. It doesn't matter what I do. Everything is like planned with contingencies after contingencies, and that's just in my personal life. Like, it's infectious. It's bad when you have your own collection of personal collection of sticky notes, just for emergencies. You never know.
Honestly, I can't wait for you to be swooped and picked up by whatever company, because I'm thinking that you're gonna be like, it's not like say you're just gonna be like, right, move out the way, I'm about to produce the hell out of this.
I mean, it's that thing I've always dreamt of, like, basically being. It was actually a couple of years ago with E3, and there was some people on stage with mobility aids, and I'm like, oh, and I was like, that, because my dream was always I mean, as you know, I love talking. Talking's great. I have a skill that I had to learn. I'm going to use this skill. It's like when you learn any other language, right? If you've learned German, you're going to want every opportunity to learn German. So I'm going to take every opportunity I can to talk to people so I can use this skill that I've learned. It's how I stay fluent in neurotypical social communication.
That's good. Because again, hence why you're kind of a natural producer. That communication call. But we do have to move on to our last
go for it.
Don't worry, like Dom was up there with his episode, so you can have it just as long. But obviously we end normally our episode on talking about our favourite gaming moments that really stand out to us, whether that's just a game that you played in your childhood that really still sticks to you, or something recent, or maybe just like an accessible moment that you were just like, this is brilliant in gaming.
That's a hard question for me, because I have so many. It's because my love of games is like it's all driven by this collection of very sort of poignant moments that I want to be able to,
I would say, what's the earliest one then? Like, what's kind of like, let's go retro. Lots of the a childhood game, like maybe one of your first ones that you played. It's always like
playing Spellbound on the Spectrum. So yeah,
yeah, going classic.
yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, there is sometimes the assumption.
Like I say, you are a legacy Spectrum person, so
Exactly.
no,
I
you
mean,
do.
when I played it, it was already everyone had already upgraded to something else because
Yeah,
obviously second-hand consoles. But it meant that I got to experience the previous generation. You know, these little moments of like, it brought my family. Gaming brought my family together. I mean, I have 4 biological siblings and 4 step siblings, basically. So I have a large family. But when the biological siblings growing up, particularly me and my I'm the oldest, my 2 elder of my younger brothers. Yes, there were a lot of fighting because that's siblings for you.
of
But
course.
it did bring us together as a family. We'd watch a parent play, you know, like memories. I mean, my dad unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. I have memories that I will never be free. You know, like I will never lose of him teaching me in Gran Turismo on the grass, off the gas. You know, little things like that I'll always remember. Him completing levels for me that I found hard in Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive, you know, things like that. But, you know, it's interesting because I play a lot of different games. You know, I will go back and play older games again. And so it's actually, do you know what's funny? I was playing Unreal Tournament, the Game of the Year edition, right?
Oh wow.
And that's one of the earlier games on the PC that I played when I was, what, must have been 12-ish, maybe. That game is incredibly accessible, right? And it kind of made me, you know, looking at it with the eyes I have now, right? I didn't realize how many of those options I was using as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You know, you can turn the head bob on and off. You can change individual settings. You've got all that control over it. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like the previous episode with Morgan Baker, go check it out. Like, you know, she was speaking a lot about the accessibility that's in, like, you know, in Zelda games in the past. And it's kind of like, oh, when you suddenly look back at things and realize what's it there, it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a, you know, a sort of a fluffy moment, really, to go, oh yeah, that, you know, that old games kind of had, because of the limitations, they had a lot of really great accessibility.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I have like these snapshots. I mean, everyone has them. There's always a YouTube Watch Mojo playlist on great moments on gaming. You know, like playing Shadow of the Colossus, or like, you know, playing Final Fantasy number whatever, you know, sort of thing.
Number 9 is correct.
Yeah, number 9 is my favorite. Yeah, so it's interesting. So games do something to me that real life can't do very well, and that is enable me to express emotions that don't come naturally. Part of my autism is I have alexithymia, so that is the state at which you are not able to determine an emotion you're feeling. So if someone said, how are you, you know, like, I've learned how to communicate. So if someone says, how are you feeling, and they want an honest answer, I don't, it's hard for me to comprehend that. I have to listen to what my body is physically telling me so I can understand what my brain is telling me emotionally. Games, I will bawl. Absolutely bawl at emotional scenes. I will express strong emotions in various capacities. And it's because, like, Final Fantasy 9, bawled, absolutely bawled, cried all the time. Like, it was such an emotional game, you know, and stuff like that. You know, part of it is the audio, part of it is the experiences, but those are experiences that I obviously, if they weren't accessible to me, either financially as someone from a disadvantaged background like that, or from an accessibility from a disability level, if I wasn't able to access them, like, I would never have known how to express my emotions, you know. It's, I mean, it is interesting, like, accessibility moments recently. Obviously, accessibility is a job now. Like, when I started uni, when I was doing all the UX stuff and I was researching it, and that's when I first read about Ian Hamilton, you know, and his work and stuff, I was like, ooh. And then what's funny is I went to when I went to EGX the year that I did the panel for you and with you and that, and I'm talking to them and I'm thinking, so what about accessibility positions and stuff? And they're like, there's no such thing. We don't do that. I'm like, do accessibility or don't do accessibility positions. We don't do any of that. It's all to do with design. So that's in 2016, right?
Yeah.
So in that year. So that's how only 6 years ago, the industry was in that place where, oh, we don't deal with that. We don't do that. Nothing to do with us. We don't, it's not important to us. And it was never, it's, you know, as with most things, it's not malicious. It was just that was the way that they'd always done things. Whereas now companies are creating accessibility departments, are creating arms specifically to look at accessibility from a broad sort of point of view, and then sort of on a granular level, like throughout the company. They're looking, I mean, my plan, lots of my plans revolve around targeting the indie community, who often don't have a lot of access to the same resources as AAA companies do when it comes to accessibility, including consultation. You know, because a lot of it could be perceived as not affordable. So I'm definitely, you know, got business plans in place, you know, to sort of aim towards that direction to make it more accessible. Because the industry has gone from, in those 6 years, from we're not really bothered about that, that's nothing, I don't know what you're talking about, to people are starting to make jobs that didn't exist before to solve a problem that has always existed.
That's kind of a brilliant note to end on your episode, definitely. And you know, because like, that is kind of like, you know, one of the flags that you fly, and it's like, you know, accessibility is important, and it's always been important. It's just you're paying attention to it now. And that's what we kind of need to do, like, you know, as an industry, is actually pay attention to it now. Don't wait now.
Now it's already too late. Exactly. But that's the thing. In reality, it is never too late to sort of think about everything in game dev, from the sort of back end, behind the scenes, from your team, as well as the front end and the end user and things like that. Thinking about it at all is better than not bothering, you know, and thinking about the accessibility, you know, how are your team doing? How are you making sure that they can make great games that everybody can play?
Exactly. So as we reach the end of our, the episode, is there a way for people to follow you on Twitter, for example?
So you can follow me on Twitter at WonderpussGospel with an O, not a U. There's a story behind it. Ask me on Twitter.
Don't worry, if you watch this on YouTube, we'll put links to Harriet's Twitter down below, and then useful links there as well. But this is basically say thank you for joining me. You know, you have such a way of talking so frankly, but also very insightfully about like disability and neurodiversity, and the industry is just desperate for people like you, I think. And you know, I really hope that companies, indie companies, or whoever pays attention to you and, you know, really wants to jump in and work with you, because they're going to get so much more than just a accessibility consultant. I think they're going to get more than they expected, I think.
I'm a complete package with extra free DLC. I'm like the whole thing. And it is a matter of, you know, I hope, obviously I've got more confidence now in myself, and I do hope that people start hiring more people. I mean, hire me, but also hire people like me, you know. There are lots of us, you know, ready and waiting with the knowledge, the subject matter expertise, and the lived experience and the passion to actually make these changes and make the industry a better place overall.
So again, thank you, and join us next time as we release another episode of DNA of Games with more great guests like Harriet. But if you enjoyed that, obviously follow us, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, do all the things that social media demands you do. And we'll see you next time. So bye. Harriet, you can break the screen. Thanks again to Harriet, and be sure to follow her online. Details in the description below. Make sure you follow the DNA of Games podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. Or give us a follow on Twitter at ManyCatsCIC. Hope to see you again next episode.